When my neighbor Delilah Thornburg plowed through my mailbox for the 7th time in just 2 months, I knew we weren't just neighbors anymore. We were officially at war. You'd think I was exaggerating, but no, that's exactly how it started. Me, at 6 in the morning, shuffling outside in yesterday's work clothes, already tired, with that stubborn smell of diesel from the trash trucks still hanging in the air, and my handcrafted oak mailbox, my grandfather's design, 3 weekends of sweat and sawdust, just splintered all over the street. It looked like a tornado had come through and targeted only me. I was still holding my coffee mug, ceramic shards slipping from my hands and exploding on the driveway, scalding coffee burning my ankles. But the heat building inside my chest was way worse, because there she was, Delilah, backing her pristine white Escalade out of her driveway, chrome freshly scraped, as if daring me to say a word. That's when I tasted rage, metallic and sharp, like biting down on tinfoil. Because this woman wasn't just careless, she was deliberate. She wanted a fight. And maybe, deep down, so did I. See, I'm not the type to roll over. What do you do when someone keeps wrecking your property and acting like you're the one out of line? Does this kind of thing happen everywhere? Or is it just me? Let me back up a sec. Because the story isn't just about one mailbox or even one crazy neighbor. My name's Marcus Ricks, 52, recently divorced, 20 years in the Navy Seabees. Yeah, the guys who build runways under fire, bridges where nobody thinks a bridge should go. You'd think after all that, civilian life would be easy. I bought this modest ranch house on Maple Street in Willowbrook, hoping for some peace. A real yard, good bones, tinkering in the garage, maybe just waving to folks and getting a wave back. That's what the realtor sold me. What she didn't mention was Willowbrook's HOA, established 1987, more rules than the Navy, twice the paperwork. Everything manicured. 3 approved house colors, cream, sage, or what they called warm beige, which looked exactly like the other 2 if you ask me. And running this little empire was Delilah Thornburg, a real estate agent with a shiny Escalade and a smile that could freeze the sun. Treasurer of the HOA, unopposed for 6 years. She'd never been in a gym, but she wore designer workout gear like it was armor, and her hair didn't move even when the wind howled. The first time we met, I was installing my grandpa's mailbox design, solid oak, hand-carved roof, little details that made it a work of art. I remember the cedar smell, the linseed oil, the memory of Gramps telling me, build it to outlast the storms. I was tightening the final bolt when I heard her heels on my driveway. "Excuse me," she said, voice like honey poured over broken glass. "I'm Delilah Thornburg, HOA board treasurer. That mailbox isn't compliant." I stood up, wiped my hands, and told her I'd read every bylaw twice. Height, material, everything. She gave me a smile sharp enough to cut steel. "Perhaps you misunderstood the aesthetic guidelines," she said, making standards sound like a threat. I showed her my screenshots. Section 4.3, natural wood, max height 36 inches, earth tone staining allowed. She didn't even blink. "Mr. Hendris, the written rules are one thing. Community harmony is another. Surely a man of your background knows the importance of fitting in." There was something in her voice, like she already knew everything about me and didn't like what she found. I told her quietly, "The mailbox stays." Her lips tightened. "We'll see about that." She took 3 photos, got in her Escalade, and glided away. That was a Tuesday. By Friday, my mailbox looked like it had lost a fight with a bulldozer. Posts snapped. Oak splinters everywhere, flower bed destroyed, tire tracks gouged into the mulch. I called the police. Officer Jim Martinez showed up, seemed sympathetic, but as soon as I mentioned the HOA, his tone changed. "Without video or witnesses, it's just your word against hers." And sure enough, Monday brought a cease and desist letter on heavy cream paper, Thornburg and Associates, embossed in gold. It claimed I was willfully disrupting community harmony, gave me 72 hours to comply, or I'd face $500 a day fines. The weight of that letter was real. But after 20 years in the Navy, I knew when somebody was bluffing. So I did what any stubborn Navy vet would do. Headed to the county courthouse, the place where hope goes to die, and asked Janet at the records desk for every public HOA document since '87. Turns out, the original bylaws were pretty basic. Keep your grass short, no purple houses, don't park junkers on the lawn. But here's the kicker. Any rule change needed a homeowner vote, 60% approval, and written notice. 90% of Delilah's standards had never been adopted. She was running a private dictatorship. Next step, follow the money. I requested HOA financials. Janet stamped the forms, winked, and said most folks never bothered to check. While I waited, I started documenting everything. Recorded every word Delilah said. Took photos. Logged it all in a green notebook, just like the Navy. Then, twist number 1, Ruth Kowalski showed up at my door. 78, retired paralegal, sharper than a box of razor blades. Armed with oatmeal cookies and a folder thicker than the Manhattan phone book. Thought you could use some backup, she said, and dropped her bombshell. She'd been documenting HOA abuses for years. Photos, letters, financial weirdness, everything. Delilah's got a system, Ruth told me, 3 families in 5 years. She harasses them until they sell cheap, then flips the house for profit. She controlled the listings, dragged down prices, flipped them high 6 months later. Suddenly, my problem wasn't just personal. This was a neighborhood-wide scam. That night, I dove deep into state law. Most people don't realize HOA fines and enforcement actually require formal hearings and appeal rights. Delilah was banking on nobody knowing their rights. So, Wednesday, I rebuilt my mailbox. Same design. This time I hid a motion-activated camera inside the peak, feeding footage to the cloud. Sure enough, 4 days later at 3 a.m., a dark SUV pulled up. Somebody in a hoodie, baseball bat in hand, destroyed my work in 2 minutes flat. The plate was hidden, but the SUV's dented rear panel was a dead giveaway. Delilah's Escalade. This time, I had evidence. Delilah's counterattack was a petition taped to my door, accusing me of running an illegal business, excessive noise, aggressive behavior. 12 signatures, though half the handwriting looked suspiciously familiar. City inspectors, code enforcement, noise complaints, all at once. Each call meant explaining I wasn't running a criminal empire, just fixing leaky faucets for neighbors. The harassment was relentless. Out of desperation, I turned to Jorge Santos, 2 doors down. His kids played in my yard, and his Ring cameras saw everything. "This is nuts, man," he said, inviting me into his garage, a mad scientist's den of wires and circuit boards. Jorge had cloud backups of every front yard in the block. Together, we watched Delilah's little propaganda tour, going house to house, clipboard in hand, whispering about my crimes. Twist number 2. Jorge's footage showed her manipulating people, but it also revealed that her stats about property values tanking were pure fiction. Jorge was an IT guy. He had the real sales data. Our home values had gone up 12%. She was using scare tactics to bully the neighborhood. By Friday, Delilah was calling an emergency HOA meeting for the safety of the community. We knew what was coming, so we prepared. Ruth brought her evidence. Jorge brought his data, and I wore my best shirt in the attitude of a man who's been pushed one step too far. That night, the community center was packed. Delilah, all business at the podium, started painting me as a criminal, using doctored slides, fake stats, the works. "Point of order," Ruth cut in, her voice slicing through the room. "Your numbers are fake. I have the real MLS records. Property values are up. This whole show is a sham." Delilah's mask started slipping. Jorge stood up, laid out how Delilah had used the HOA to force sales and profit off desperate families. The crowd turned. I opened my folder, showed the original 1987 rules. 90% of violations were made up. Ruth dropped her last bombshell. $47,000 paid by the HOA to Delilah's consulting company for work that was never done. Bank statements, fake invoices, everything. Cornelius, the HOA president, tried to wriggle out of it, but Jorge had the proof. The consulting company was set up right after Delilah took office. Now the room was in open revolt. I played an audio clip. Delilah, planning with an associate to move this property within 60 days or consider more direct action. The room exploded. Residents who'd been silent stood up, some shaking, some in tears, all angry. Delilah tried to regain control, but Ruth wasn't done. She revealed more: payments, fraud, and evidence that board members had signed off on all of it. The community had enough. The feds had enough, too. Detective Morrison, from the state HOA fraud task force, had been working with us. And just in time, too, because Delilah went nuclear. Called a crew to demolish my new steel-reinforced mailbox, complete with city permits and a fresh restraining order to keep me from interfering. But Morrison was ready. The demolition crew barely started before unmarked cars pulled up, badges came out. Delilah, Cornelius, even the demolition foremen were arrested for fraud, conspiracy, embezzlement, and civil rights violations. That day was electric. News vans, neighbors on their lawns, Ruth striding up with her folder like she was the attorney general. The whole block cheered as the feds led Delilah away. I told the news it all started with a mailbox. But really, it was about fighting for your community when the bullies are the ones writing the rules. The next 6 months were like waking up after a bad storm. Sunlight felt new. Delilah got 5 years, Cornelius 3, the money was recovered, and we created a scholarship for local kids to fight HOA abuse. I got elected president. Yeah, the guy with the mailbox. First act, we burned the 30-page rulebook, replaced it with 3 pages of actual common sense, written by actual people. Our neighborhood healed. Property values shot up. People started talking again, helping each other out. My mailbox, now known as Fort Knox, became a landmark. The documentary crew rolled in, David versus Goliath in suburbia, coming soon. But honestly, the best feeling was watching the Rodriguez kids play guitar in their driveway. Mrs. Patterson plant roses without fear, Jorge's daughter win that first scholarship. You know, I started out just wanting a mailbox that could survive a bully. But what we built, me, Ruth, Jorge, the whole block, was a real community, the kind where people look out for each other. If you're dealing with your own HOA nightmare, remember, document everything, find your allies, build something they can't break, and never underestimate the power of neighbors who've had enough. So tell me, what's your HOA horror story? Drop it in the comments. Let's build a community of fighters. Because when we stick together, even the strongest bullies can't tear us down.